I understand the contract was just renewed and adopted. Surely, though, we realize that contract needs to be adjusted to reflect the virus impact. I understand the challenges have been many for every individual and company alike through this pandemic. I believe communication is the key to success in solving all issues, and I would appreciate the opportunity to help find a compromise and safe, practical operation guidelines. Respectfully, Stuart Rice, Midway Bar and Grill. And that concludes the public comment.
Thank you, Lisa. I think with that, we'll move to the Commissioner Communications. If any of the commissioners have any comments or things they would like to share with each other, this is the time. Hearing nothing, we'll move to the director's report. Barry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start today with some lottery news. The first week in May is Public Service Recognition Week. And this year, lottery recognized exceptional state workers in 2 areas. The Ambassador of Public Service Award winners represent our values of accountability, excellence, equity, and integrity. Lottery recipients include Spencer Haley, Jen Roper, and Elisa Zavala. These awards were voted on by the Employee Recognition Committee, made up of 18 employees from different areas of the organization. And for Commitment to State Service Award winners, deliver on service commitments, go above and beyond to create a positive and memorable interaction with the lottery for our customers, both internal and external, and our vendors and retail partners. Lottery recipients include Peter Tullis with less than 2 years of state service, which is a category for this award, and Thomas Batiste with more than 30 years of state service, the other category. These awards were voted on by staff of the lottery. This year we had 24 employees nominated by their peers for these awards, and I offer my thanks to all of those who were nominated and my congratulations to the award winners. I'll talk now about the Education Support Professional of the Year Award, a great example of good work being rewarded by more work. The legislature created Oregon's Education Support Professional of the Year program in the 2019 session. Inspired by the success of Oregon's Teacher of the Year program, the 2019 bill directed the Oregon Department of Education and Lottery to design and implement a program to honor an education support professional serving students in any grade from pre-kindergarten through grade 12. This month, Paula Steinweg from the Jewel School District was named the very first recipient of the Education Support Professional of the Year. Thanks to the Oregon Department of Education's partnership with the Oregon Lottery, Paula received a monetary gift of $5,000 and an award plaque. A matching plaque and banner were awarded to the school to mark Paula's achievements and her impact on the Jewel community. I'm proud that our efforts to honor great teachers in Oregon was recognized and that the legislature tasked us to expand that recognition to other exceptional professionals in Oregon schools. A little bit more about Paula. For over 20 years, Paula has served in a variety of roles at Jewel School District and currently works as a bus driver, education assistant, and school librarian. Paula initiated and coordinates a biannual Washington, D.C. trip for middle school students, providing the opportunity for out-of-state travel and to experience culture and history beyond the Jewel community. And the list goes on. Congratulations to Paula and the Jewel School District. Moving on to sales, Video Lottery has maintained strong sales since the last commission meeting. In fact, 11 of Lottery's top 15 Video Lottery sales weeks have now been generated during calendar year 2021. This trend has endured even in the face of 15 Oregon counties moving to extreme risk in early May for a week. Scratchits continue to perform strongly against historical levels, and for fiscal year 21 remain 40% up over the prior year. Keno is currently performing more than 5% over the prior year. With no notable draw game jackpots in the past month, sales for Powerball, Mega Millions, and Megabucks followed historical trends. Overall, lottery year-over-year sales certainly reflect a tale of 2 different times. Last year, we were in the midst of COVID-related shutdowns, and lottery sales reflected that. Year-over-year comparisons for business week 45 and week 46 show a positive difference of more than 200%. For last business years, those weeks brought in about 8 and 9 million in sales, respectively. For our current business year, those same sales weeks were both over $30 million. And given the level of lost sales during this pandemic, it is remarkable to note that the lottery's overall sales have passed the $1 billion threshold for the 16th consecutive year and are over 7% higher than last year. As you'll hear from Kathy Ortega during the financial report, our financial position is strengthening. Finally, some fun facts on prize payments. Rather than a short rundown of recent winners, I'd like to give you a big picture look at just how hard lottery has been working to keep prize payments flowing to our winners. As a cross-functional team continues to develop plans that will provide our players more convenient payment options now and into the future, we've also done some data gathering. While the pandemic has certainly changed how we pay prizes and the volume of claims coming in by mail, our teams are hard at work. We looked at all prizes processed, excluding annuity prizes, through the Claim Center for the 45 business days between March 1st and April 30th, compared to that's more than 45 days. I think it's March 15th through April 30th. Sorry, compared to the same time period in pre-pandemic 2019. We went from 160 claimants, 410 tickets processed, and $671,638 paid on average each day in 2019, to 170 claimants, 292 tickets processed, and $565,488 paid every day over the same 45-day window this year. Given the volume of mail-in claims we receive each day, plus the increased time a mail-in claim takes to pay versus interacting directly with the player, these numbers are impressive and a clear sign of the hard work everyone involved in this process is putting in. There's always room to improve and make the player experience better, but while that work gets planned, good job to player services and security staff for getting more than $500,000 in prizes out the door every day. And that concludes my report for this month, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Director Pack's report? I just wanted to say I'm also particularly pleased that they've expanded the educator, the teacher of the year, and the awards we can give. That's really great, Barry. With that, let's move to the vaccination incentive game agenda item. And Barry, I think you're on to talk to us a little bit about that as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes. So just a quick bit of background on this agenda item. I'm here to ask for your authorization to offer a new lottery game, which is intended to help incentivize Oregonians to get vaccinated against COVID-19. For background, about 10 days or so ago, the governor's office was approached by researchers from Stanford who have been working on using gamification to incent people to make better long-term decisions for themselves, such as financial savings, working with people to increase their savings and having great success. They suggested that the same could be done for vaccines in Oregon. Governor's office then approached Lottery to see if we could partner with the Oregon Health Authority to come up with a game to encourage vaccination, trying to get up to the 70% of Oregonians with at least one dose of one of the vaccines by July 4th. So we have been in the process of working with the Oregon Health Authority, Department of Justice, and our staff to figure out a game that we could propose and get up in the market very quickly to support those goals, but also to put in the framework for any potential second phases of public health needs in the current crisis as it relates to COVID-19. The game itself, some of the mechanics we're still working out on how to work with the Oregon Health Authority and the Oregon Lottery. But the proposal is a pretty simple draw-based game. All Oregonians 18 and over who are vaccinated or who get at least one dose of the vaccine between now and the draw date which is June 28th, would be entered into the game. The game has a very simple prize matrix. There's one statewide prize of $1 million, and then there are 36 $10,000 prizes to be awarded to one winner in each of Oregon's counties. There are, sorry, my brain is frozen here for a second. We will be offering this as a lottery game in partnership with the Oregon Health Authority. As I mentioned before, they will be using federal vaccine incentive dollars to pay the prizes. We are working through the details of data transfers back and forth. We will be using our random number generators to draw the winners, as we normally do for Oregon's Game Megabucks or our second chance drawings. Those will be handled by our draw staff and our security section. And then those winners will get vetted through the Oregon Health Authority to ensure patient privacy is protected. Lottery will not have any access to actual player information like names or personally identifiable information. That'll all be handled through the Oregon Health Authority for patient privacy purposes. Players, the winner will be given a chance to consent to move forward with the prize and the release of information. And we will be targeting an announcement around the July 4th holiday. Those details are still to be worked out. Again, this would be offered as a lottery game under our authority to offer games of chance to adult Oregonians 18 and over. You may hear later other discussions on another game to award college scholarships to 12 to 17-year-olds who get vaccinated, because that is underage. That is not being offered as a lottery game. We're providing some consulting on how to put that together, but that's a game that will be offered by the Oregon Health Authority and is not part of our agenda item today. So my ask today is to authorize Lottery and myself to move forward in developing this game, putting together some temporary rules to outline the specifics of the game's eligibility and all of that, and adopt that as temporary rules, bringing permanent rules to the commission again in the future if needed. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments from the commissioners?
Barry, I have a question. I may have missed that. What's the timing on this game going out?
Thank you, Commissioner Telfer. As soon as you authorize me to move forward with this game, we will start finalizing the details, and the draw date will be on June 28th. So anyone who is currently vaccinated or gets vaccinated from now until the 28th will be entered into the drawing.
And
Thanks.
Barry, do I assume, just out of curiosity on logistics, I have two questions, that the cards that people are receiving when they get their vaccine, those are somehow registered with the state, and so the state has the names to automatically include people? Is that just some of the logistics we're trying to work out, or?
Yes, so the Oregon Health Authority has a database of everyone who gets vaccinated for COVID-19. It's reported in through the state and public health and county health authorities, as well as pharmacies and other government entities.
Got it. And then you mentioned that federal dollars were being used to pay the prizes. Do I take from that that other states are looking at this or will be doing this? It sounds like even though we were approached by the Stanford researchers, it sounds like there may be sort of a federal interest in this. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, there are other lotteries that are participating in a similar program. Ohio, I believe, was the first to announce several $1 million prizes for folks who were vaccinated. Other states are taking other approaches, giving out free plays or scratch tickets or things like that to people who are or get vaccinated.
Oh, interesting. All right. Anyone else? Questions or comments?
It's Moline. I'm just wondering, is there an option for people to opt out in terms of, if they're pulling the database, can they opt out and say, I don't want to participate in this prize?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Patel. That opt-out comes at the point at which they were actually drawn. So we will actually draw multiple winners for the $1 million prize. They will be contacted in order. If the first person decides to opt out for whatever reason, they would go to the next person.
Thank you.
Others? Hearing nothing more, is there a motion to authorize the director to proceed with the vaccination incentive game?
I move that the commission authorize the lottery director to develop, implement, and operate through temporary rulemaking a vaccine incentive lottery game as outlined by the director today. If needed again in the future, proposed permanent rules will be presented to the commission for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox,
Aye.
Chair Sathoff.
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed. I would just like to say that I think it is a positive thing that we're trying to attempt to help with the policy of the state, which is to try to get as many people vaccinated so we can all return to whatever we consider normal after this last year and a half. But anyway, I'm happy that we've been able to assist with that. With that, we'll move to the next agenda item, and that's the minutes of the previous commission meeting. The minutes of the previous commission meeting have been circulated to the commission. If there are no changes to the minutes, is there a motion to approve?
I move that the minutes of the Oregon State Lottery Commission meeting held on April 23rd, 2021 be approved as final as presented today.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox,
Aye.
Chair Sathoff.
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed. Thank you. Let's move to the financial report and Kathy Ortega.
Yes. Good morning, Chair Sathoff, Commissioners, Director Pack. For the record, my name is Kathy Ortega, Chief Financial Officer for the Oregon Lottery. We're going to go over the financial report for the month ended April 30th. If you would please look at your operating statement for the month of April. We have net revenue of 125.7 on a budget of 97.8, $27.9 million favorable to budget, which reflects some of the good revenue numbers that Director Pack referred to. And when we are looking at commissions, when we have a sizable revenue variance, we will always have a negative commission variance because as we earn more revenue, we're paying out more in commissions. And the same case is the case with tickets. Our scratch-it sales are doing very well and above forecast, and so we're paying out a little more. Sales support, games equipment parts and maintenance, and public information have some small timing differences, which when we get to the year-to-date section, you'll see we're still significantly under budget in those categories. And finally, we have net profit of $88.9 million on a budget of $57.3, $31.6 million favorable to budget. Going to the year-to-date operating statement, the net revenue of $808.9 million on a budget of $747 or almost $748 million is $60.9 million above budget. And the comments that I made regarding commissions, tickets, sales support are all as I mentioned. Net profit on a budget of $492.9 million on a budget of $437.4 million, $55.5 million favorable to budget. I have this.
Kathy, do you have,
Yes.
could I just interrupt for 1 minute and ask a question? All of these, obviously, the numbers are looking good, but on both the April and the year-to-date, it looks like we're a little behind in our modernization spending. And you may be going to talk about that later, but is that timing? Does that have to do with COVID? Does that have to do with just delay in plans? And if there's a spot in the later materials you want to talk about that, that's fine. You can hold off.
Yes, thank you, Chair Southos. There is a schedule that I can refer to in the package of materials that we can talk about that. So I'll save answering that question and flip to that schedule if that's all right with you.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. On the schedule of services and supplies, the negative variance in retailer recovery is reflective of comments I've made in the past where we absorbed 2 months worth of line charges when the retailers were shut down. And I also have the balance sheet as of April 30th for you to take a look at today. And then I am scrolling through, at least my version of the materials, to get to a schedule that represents, it's called Business Modernization Program Budget as of April 30th. And it shows that of our total program budget, 27.483 million, we've spent 8.282 million. The spending is ramping up. Quite a bit of it was in the last month, and I think it reflects our some of the things that we experienced this year with scheduling and COVID. And just to mention, we'll be talking later in the month about our budget, and you're going to see a lot of this just coming forward.
So with that on that, it seemed to me when we've talked about this before, there were some sort of categories of things that needed to be done that we couldn't move on other items on this list because other things needed to be accomplished first, dependencies. And I'm just trying to get a sense, are we resolving those so we can move on? Is this, obviously it's going to cause probably a permanent delay in some of this work. And it doesn't have to be now, but I know that we all think this modernization work is very, very important to the lottery. And so I'm just at some point would like to understand how this is going to affect overall, even if it just means it's a delay in accomplishing things.
Go ahead, Barry.
Thanks, Kathy. Madam Chair, my plan was as part of the budget presentation next month to give you an update on the business plan, both in terms of what has been accomplished and what is still on our plate moving forward. So if you can give us another few weeks, we'll be adding that to the budget presentation.
Absolutely. I assumed, I just wanted to make sure we were going to be hearing about it because I know we all are really supportive of this and how critical this is to the business. Thanks.
Okay. And with that, that's what I have for you today. I'd be happy to entertain any other questions.
Kathy, I have a question regarding our operating working capital. I'm glad to see that it's inching up, actually at a pretty good clip, another 11 this go around. Given this trend, do you have an expectation on timing of getting back up to the 100 million?
Yes, Commissioner Telfer, I do, and I think that's part of the materials that Director Pack indicated that we were going to provide to you as a part of our budget discussions. So if you could wait for your answer for that, I think we'll be able to provide more information.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the monthly financial statements?
I move that the Oregon State Lottery financial statements for month ended April 30th, 2021 be approved for the record as presented today.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox,
Aye.
Chair Sathoff.
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed. Thank you. Kathy, is there anything else?
No, that's all I have for today.
Great. With that, we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, the Director and Assistant Director of Security Compensation. I know that you've all received information in advance. I want to say that the team, HR included, has answered my questions about the compensation, and I'm sure they were available to answer any of your questions. The compensation that is being suggested is commensurate with both the market and with the other comparable areas of the state, as well as with the other lottery employees. So first, maybe before I ask for the approval, I'll open this up to ask for any questions or comments or discussion by the commission. Hearing none, I think we'll go right to, is there a motion to approve the recommended bonus for the Director and Assistant Director of Security?
I recommend approval for the lottery to implement the recommended bonus payment for the Director and Assistant Director of Security per the memo that was provided to the commission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox,
Aye.
Chair Sathoff.
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed. And let's go to the lottery forecast. Josh Leonard. And we did receive your materials as well.
Morning, everyone. It's great to be back with you. Fortunately, so much better news today than when we got together a year ago. I was looking at the exact numbers, and when we were together last May, the pandemic had just set in, the world had changed, everything had been shut down. Obviously, the video lottery terminals had been shut down in order to help on the public health front, where if we're going to encourage our citizens and restrict their activities to indoor environments, we don't also want to entice them to be indoors playing entertainment games. And so at the time, we had built in a massive recession to the economy. We thought it would take 4 years to get back, economically speaking. Reduce lottery transfers by about $350 million. Today, here with much better news, at every point in the last 12 months, last 14 months, things have turned out to be better than feared. Things have turned out, the economy's been more resilient, the federal policy has been more robust, and the impacts on the economy were better. So where do we end 1921? Well, we ended 1921 down $250 million, not $350 million. So it's an improvement of $100 million relative to what I was telling you a year ago. But that's still a massive hit to lottery resources that Barry and his team have had to navigate with your assistance over the course of the last year. So even though the outlook is very, very bright, and the lottery outlook is fully intact at this point, it doesn't mean, obviously the past year has been very hard on certain segments of the economy, lottery included, because the bars and the restaurants are the most impacted in the entire country, the most impacted, I should say. So overall, from here on out, we have good news, and the sales have surprised to the upside when the terminals have been turned on. We'll get to that here in a second. But overall, the outlook is bright. The past year has been brutal, but it's getting a lot better. So I just wanted to start off with the first slide. We're looking at real GDP. So this is economic output, how many goods and services are being made and sold in the U.S. economy. We're looking at 6 to 7% GDP growth this year. The first dark blue bar, this is the largest increase in GDP growth in the U.S. Am I not sharing my screen? I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're not, Josh. I was about to.
That's a new one. I've done the mute thing a million times, but I've never done the forget to share your screen part of it. Sorry. Okay. So hopefully, let me know if you're not seeing it now. This is the first chart, right? This is GDP growth. This is the strongest GDP growth we're expected to see, since 1984's Morning in America, right? This is something we haven't seen in decades, potentially generations. This is the baseline consensus forecast is in the 6 to 7% range, 4 to 5% next year. After that time, it slows down back around to 2% GDP growth because we'll be at full employment. This will be a very quick recovery relative to the ones we've seen in the last couple of cycles that have taken a really long time coming out of the dot-com recession and the housing recession, the housing bubble bursting. They took years and years to get back. I said our forecast was for 4 years to recover a year ago. Now we're saying it's 3 years, and the risks are also to the upside on that. So better. And the main reason for this is federal policy, right? If we took at the whole U.S. economy and we look last year, what was going on, there was about a 10% hole in the economy relative to where we thought we would be. And you do the whole amount of pain that we saw last spring and summer and the like, it's about 10%. And now we filled it with federal policy equal to 25% of GDP between the CARES Act, the COVID relief bill at the end of the year, the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, and some smaller stuff along the way. That's a 25% plug into a 10% hole, means overall you should be at a better, higher outlook. And we certainly are. And the biggest bright spot where you see this occur is on household incomes. This is total personal income in Oregon. The way you read these charts is you start at 0 on the left. That's how much income was in the state of Oregon at the start of a recession or the start of a business cycle. As you work your way to the right, this is how it evolves over the course of the cycle. And you can see the red line drastically different than what we've seen in recent cycles. We're currently at that second peak there in the dotted red line. That's the first quarter of this year, when that third round of recovery rebates went out, the $1,400 a person, that 95% of Oregonians got that. 5% have high incomes too high to qualify, but 95% of folks got it. And incomes were 20% higher than they were at the start of the pandemic. This is the reason why the outlook is so bright. The money is there. The money is there. The question is whether people would spend it, and then how fast can we grow? The good news is overall, there's no hesitancy.
Are you worried about overheating in the economy?
I have that coming up in a couple slides, and we are a little bit.
I have a little more fundamental question than that. This is obviously getting juiced by federal dollars, but it's not sustainable. But is that sort of hit what's creating a shorter period of time to get back to where we expect normal to be in terms of GDP and so on? It's not a sustainable amount dollars, but it is helping to get us back faster. Is that the idea? And does that depend on if people spend? If they save, does it still, if they save those dollars, is it okay? It depends on if people spend. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And you can see in the chart, right, these spikes when we get these big recovery rebates are temporary. They're not going to persist, right? But you can see that underlying trend is expected to be more like the recovery coming out of the 80s and the 90s, not coming out of the dot-com and housing bust. This is a different nature of this cycle. The last two ones have been really prolonged jobless recoveries, demand-driven recessions and cycles that take a long time to get back. The expectations are this one's totally different for a variety of reasons, including the federal policy. And your point about spending versus savings is the key to the near-term outlook, and that's what this next slide's all about, right? Here, this is video lottery sales, for the last year or so, and then our forecast for the next couple of years. Light blue line is the forecast pre-pandemic. It says March 2020 on it, which is when the pandemic hit. We released that forecast in February of 2020 officially to the governor and the legislature. So that's our pre-pandemic baseline. You can see the dark blue bar, what we released this week, the dark blue line, is the same. Obviously, we're coming off of these record highs today. And we're so normally we use the economic forecast and the demographics and all that sort of stuff to inform and to drive the lottery forecast. But because the question you were just asking about spending versus saving is so key to the current macroeconomic outlook, we're using the lottery sales to inform the macroeconomic forecast because the question was whether people would be hesitant and whether they would only dip their toes slowly back into these previously restricted activities, going on vacations, going out to eat, getting on airplanes and the like. And the question isn't whether you or I are hesitant or whether you or I may be double masking it still because we're worried about the pandemic. No judgment if we are. The question is at a macro level, an economy-wide level, is that going to be the case? And the answer is unequivocally no. People are plowing back into these activities that have been restricted in the past year, as quickly as we can. And so that's great news for the overall economic outlook. Obviously, we're coming off of these really record-setting sales in Oregon from video lottery, and that is a bright spot for consumer spending, of course, given it's a previously restricted indoor activity and the like. So the other thing to point out about these in-person services, whether it's we put off routine dental appointments, we put off haircuts, we put off vacations and going out to eat and the like, is all of these sectors are labor intensive. It takes a lot of manpower, woman power, to provide all these things to consumers. And so what we've done is we've front-loaded the economic outlook. The next 6 to 9 months, we should see basically record job gains in the economy because we know the income's there, and now we know the consumer spending is there. The question is really, can we ramp up as quickly as the demand side of the economy is indicating we should? We're going to run into some supply constraints. So, but what does this mean for the overall outlook? That baseline near-term outlook is very, very strong. That does mean the risks are kind of to the downside, is that if we can't actually grow the supply side of the economy as quickly as we think we can, or as quickly as we think the demand would indicate the need is there, we do run into supply constraints. We do run into the potential of overheating. We're at the productive capacity on the manufacturing side. Most of the sectors are at the point where they need to invest in new plants and equipment or add an extra shift or the like to increase output to accommodate the demand that's out there in terms of home remodeling and in new construction and semiconductors and all that sort of stuff that we're at the bottlenecks of the economy today. They can't produce more without new plants and equipment and labor. And so whether we get that or not matters tremendously for the overall economic outlook. We were at this point in 2018. In 2018, we really needed to see more business investment, and we didn't get it despite, really large corporate tax cuts. We didn't get the business investment, probably in large part because we ramped up a trade war at the same time, and that zapped all of the demand. And so we had incentives to invest for businesses because we gave them big corporation tax cuts, but then we took all that demand away from the economy by ratcheting up a global trade war. And so we're back at that point in terms of productive capacity at the U.S. level and a lot of our key sectors here in Oregon. And so we're more optimistic we'll get some of that this time. But if we don't get that business investment and productive increases in the economy, it's really just going to go into prices and inflation, and that would be the worst outcome possible.
I have a question as it relates to the lottery's employment, and mostly this is hospitality, right? Restaurants and hotels and whatnot. I'm hearing from that's hard to find labor in the market. And so I'm just wondering how we can ramp up to pre-employment levels in 2022 when it's hard to find staff to run these things. And there's still, really a high unemployment for that industry specifically. That is where the lottery machines are.
Absolutely. And that's getting at what we're getting on the next slide here, right? There's a number of factors that are I should say they're pandemic specific and they're temporary. That's holding back supply right now, labor supply, number of people looking for work or available for work. It's down nationwide, a couple million. It's down in Oregon, about 45,000 people. That's a big number. That's about a good year's worth of job growth that has been just sucked out of the economy for a variety of reasons. I think part of it is the fear of the virus itself, right? Obviously, the pandemic is waning, vaccinations are increasing. The lottery game, that's the chance drawing to help it boost vaccinations, that seems to be pretty successful in other states as well. So the good news is that's going to go away. People don't have to be scared about contracting the virus or spreading it amongst their family or whatever. And the thing about the leisure and hospitality industry is these are consumer-facing, front-facing things where you're interacting with people. You also have to be the mask police and now the vaccination card police if you want to sit in the mask-off section of the restaurant. So I mean, it's not something a lot of people want to do at the moment. I understand that. The other thing, though, we have to be honest about is public policy and the federal enhancement of the unemployment insurance benefits. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Right, we're providing a capital infusion to low-wage workers. We're providing an opportunity that they don't have to financially take a job or have to take a job for financial reasons. Otherwise, they'll get evicted. We're providing them enough money so that they can stay home for public health reasons. That was the original rationale for the enhanced benefits at the start of the pandemic. So I think that this is a clear factor. Probably the largest piece to the puzzle when it comes to the labor supply constraints today is UI. It doesn't mean it's the majority of the problem, but I think it is probably the largest piece of the puzzle. And again, this is temporary. This policy goes away the first week of September. So it's a matter of months away and not years. The overall trajectory for leisure and hospitality in our forecast is it fully recovers by the end of 2023. So a year after the overall economy recovers will be when we get all of the employment at bars and restaurants back. We think it'll take a little bit longer because the hole is that deep. And to be honest, on a population adjusted basis, we have built in a little bit of permanent damage in leisure and hospitality on a jobs per capita, businesses per capita type basis. We have reduced the long run outlook. You can't really tell it, right? We'll have record setting number of jobs, but that record setting number of jobs will be a little bit lower than our forecast before COVID for record-setting jobs. And so we have built in some slower long-run growth as a result. We've lost about 5 or 6%, it's almost 6% now, 5.7% based upon the latest OLCC liquor license data. Bars and restaurants are down almost 6%. Was it 5%? And that's drifted closer to 6 just in the last handful of months. So we've lost some retailers. We've maybe not so much on the lottery side, but certainly the potential retailer base is down. We think those will come back as the bars and restaurants reopen and move into vacant spaces and the like. But I think we probably lost some stuff associated with the pandemic. So again, I think the big point here is yeah, we have some temporary specific challenges in the labor market today. The other thing is all of these industries have shut down and then reopened at the same time frame, right? All of these bars and restaurants in particular, they're competing for the same labor pool at the exact same time. And so that creates some temporary mismatches, some temporary frictions where you want to hire 20 people and you can only hire 10 because the person down the street's also trying to hire 20 people. And so it's some temporary frictions for sure, no question. The bigger point would be, even as these pandemic specific issues go away in the matter of the next few months, we're still going to be left with a tight labor market for demographic reasons. We're losing 20 to 25,000 Oregonians a year from the labor force due to retirements, just as the demographics, as the large baby boomer cohort generations continues to enter into the retirement years. And of course, these aren't average workers. These are people with a lifetime of experience and skill and knowledge. They're very, very valuable. It takes time to replace them in the economy, provides a lot of opportunities for younger workers to step up, but it also is not, these transitions are not costless. And so demographically, the labor market's going to be tight for the foreseeable future. And so labor's going to be hard to come by for really the next 5 to 10 years, just for those reasons alone. We now have layered on some pandemic specific issues on top of that. And here's the question that came up earlier, right? So if we have an economy with very, very strong demand, in part due to federal policy injections of money, and we have an economy that's running into supply constraints on the production side of things and on the labor side of things, it's kind of a classic recipe for inflation. And inflation, is something we haven't seen in generations, to be honest, right? We've seen disinflation, slowing down of inflation. We're seeing deflation, declining prices elsewhere in the developed world, like Japan, right? That has been the problem we've been most concerned about for the last 10, 20 years. Now, can we actually see inflation pick up on a persistent basis? We could, right? That's a risk to the outlook. And that's not really anybody's baseline outlook, in large part because a lot of the price pressures we're seeing today are expected to be temporary. We're seeing wages go up, particularly in the leisure and hospitality industry, as maybe you're competing with those enhanced unemployment insurance benefits. We're seeing a leveling up in prices, but we're seeing a leveling up in the cost of lumber and the cost of semiconductors, a lot of different things. But the question is this a one-time shift up in prices? Certainly that's happening. And then, but are we going to see another shift up in prices next year, and the year after, and the year after at a really high rate? That is the key question. Is it a temporary thing, or is it a persistent year after year thing? And it's only the year after year thing that the Federal Reserve is worried about. If it's just a temporary, we got supply bottlenecks in the economy that need to work themselves out, and higher prices will also cool some of that excess spending, the excess consumer demand out there. The Federal Reserve's not worried about that, particularly not worried about that given they undershot their inflation target for last cycle. We're 3 or 4 percentage points below target right now, cumulatively over the last cycle on inflation. So there's a lot of room to go before the Federal Reserve will say they're worried about it. Time will tell.
And then my question is, you know, the U.S. is at, you know, a higher vaccination rate than most all other countries in the world. And also all the other countries in the world, a lot of the other countries in the world had a lot of fiscal measures, might not have been direct, you know, cash infusions into the economy like the U.S. did, but they also had a lot of equity and loan guarantees that help offset some of that. And so I'm just wondering if it'll be more prolonged because, you know, the U.S. is going to be the first one out the gate and opening up their economy, and then that'll provide another injection a few years down the line once all of these other countries are. So it'll just continue this price increase and just having that, continue to heat the economy over the next 3 to 4 years.
It certainly could. And you're right that the other countries are behind us. We had some of the largest fiscal policy responses in the whole entire world. We're reopening, our vaccination rates doing better. Europe's expected to come along later this summer in terms of the reopening and the strong growth and the like. The point about the global transition mechanism for inflation is, you know, raw material costs are a really small part of overall cost of goods and services. And they don't they do work their way into overall inflation, but not on a one-for-one basis. You can clearly see in this chart, the cost of production is very, very volatile relative to overall prices. And so there's a lot of other business choices and managerial decisions that can be made to mute the impact. One of them being profit margins. Right now we're seeing, based upon the latest round of Wall Street earnings, we're seeing record corporate profits as a percentage, basically. And so there's a lot of room, should businesses choose to absorb some of these cost increases, to not pass them on to the final consumers. But of course, given that strong demand and income position, I'm not sure I would be expecting those cost pressures to be absorbed entirely by the companies. I think they would pass along as many as they could, given the demand side of the economy today. But time will tell, right? And it's not a you know, we have a few years to go here, as you were indicating. And then finally, the silver lining here is on the revenue side of things. Inflation is not entirely a bad thing, because the revenues will go up too, because people pay in nominal terms. We don't pay in inflation adjusted terms. I guess the way you would see that erosion within lottery would be the average bet. People continuing to pay the penny slots or the 25-cent games and not, you know, having a higher bet. That would be the potential erosion on the revenue side. The issue would be more on the cost side. With the higher inflation, the cost of everything would go up. Your revenues go up, but the costs go up too. Put it all together. Here's a bar chart of how much money. These are the transfers, not the revenues, but the transfers for the Economic Development Fund. The other thing I would note is you'll notice there's a massive step up between 1921, the current biennium, and the 21-23 biennium, and then only slow growth in the 23-25. That's really a function of a couple different things. One is the current record sales in video lottery that have occurred in the last couple of months. Those aren't 1921 revenues, they're 21-23 revenues, because, you know, the way we look at the sales for a quarter and then we make the transfer the next quarter. And so the sales today are transfers that will be made for state budgeting purposes in July. And so the record sales today count as actual transfers for the budget next biennium. And so that's the big reason for that jump. The other one is we've seen those really strong game performances on, you know, the Barry and Kathy were talking about them in terms of scratch tickets and Keno's doing quite well and the like. Well, we have in our forecast, at least, we have a little bit of that coming off. We have raised our permanent outlook for scratch ticket sales, though we haven't raised it that 40% and said 40% boost in sales here on out. We have it more like a 20% boost. And so those are going to taper a little bit over the next year. At least that's the baseline outlook. And part of this has to do with the fact that entertainment options are still limited. You can't go to a Blazers game. They have very limited capacity at Timbers matches. People still aren't getting on an airplane. People aren't, the airport numbers are still pretty depressed. And so as people venture out and they spread their entertainment dollars further across a variety of activities, I think that might leave a little less for gaming, or certainly Oregon gaming in particular, but that's on the margin. So I think some of the growth will slow, obviously, for a variety of those reasons. And that was it. I think.
Can I ask a couple of questions about the graph? And these are pretty basic questions, but I understand all of I understand the education, the parks, I understand the percentages. The other distributions, is that category largely what we refer to? I'm looking for context here. What we refer to as our state transfers. What's in that other distributions? It looks like it makes up about 30 to 40% of the distribution, and it actually increases more than the other types of distributions. So help me understand what's in that bucket.
Absolutely. So just to back up, as you guys know, the education, parks, and veterans are constitutional distributions.
Right.
They get a fixed share. That's about a third.
Yep.
The outdoor school gets a set amount adjusted for inflation. The PERS, Employer Incentive Fund, now receives the scoreboard revenues, right? The scoreboard revenues, that's where that money's coming from. The debt service is fixed amount based upon bonding. And then the other distributions is everything else. So this is primarily the state school fund. This is the education funding. That's not so the education 18%, I should label this a little clearer. It's hard, goes to the education stability fund, the reserve account.
That's what I'm looking for, because I wondered, thank you.
The current revenue, the money for the current education spending that goes into the budget every year, it comes out of that dark blue bar, and that's the vast majority of that. There's also Business Oregon, the old Community Economic Development Agency. Their funding comes out of that, or a lot of their funding comes out of that. And then there's smaller stuff too. County fairs get like $3 million and stuff like that.
All right, that's what I was looking for, because I saw you had the education up above, and I was thinking, well, what's the rest of this dark blue then? That makes sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, but no, I can work on the labeling. That's a good point. The differences between the reserve account and the current spending.
Anyone else on the commission? This is one, again, I'm going to say very informative, and I really thank you all for giving this ongoing. I want to encourage us to do this periodically, so that for me, the health of the lottery is tied intricately to the health of the state. And so having this information on an ongoing basis to me is really helpful. It also reminds us of the importance of the lottery. But other questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none, thank you, Josh. We will move right along to Chris on the legislative update.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Sathoff, Commissioners, Director Pack. Hopefully you can hear me okay and see my screen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm going to do a quick check-in with you on the status of the 2021 legislative session, at least from lottery's perspective. So we've been in session 4 months now. We've got a month to go, give or take, depending on when they're able to adjourn. So some events of note from this last week: the House General Government Committee had a hearing on Tuesday, just an informational hearing, which means it wasn't about any particular bill or policy, but a chance for gambling stakeholders to talk to the committee. So the Oregon Health Authority got to talk about their treatment and prevention programs, and the problem gambling advocacy community was able to talk about some of their concerns, and lottery was there for questions from the committee. And then, as you just heard from Josh, the legislature got the May revenue forecast, which is a good sign that we can wrap up the budget decisions and get adjourned on time, hopefully. And did I say my name for the record? I don't think I did. Chris Scarrow, Rules and Policy Analyst for the lottery. So I'm going to walk you through a quick update on the bills we're tracking that would affect our operations here at the lottery. So I've told you about 2 bills that are specific to the lottery. I don't have any new activity to report on these. You may recall the first bill did not move out of committee by the deadline. It was replaced with another bill, which is still in committee. So nothing to report on that.
Chris,
Chris, one
can I
question.
interrupt you and ask?
Go ahead, Chris.
Sure.
Yeah. On House Bill 3394, you say it's in committee. Has it moved chambers, or is it still in the initial chamber?
Yeah, we're still in our initial chamber, but Commissioner Telfer, as you know, the Rules Committee gets extra time to do things. So it's just sitting there. They haven't had a hearing or a work session, and one is not scheduled yet, although it could be because it is in rules. It's exempt from some of those deadlines, but nothing to report.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Chris, this is Marty. Just so I understand impact, if 3394 passes, the provision that we wouldn't be able to offer new games or game procedures, am I correct in assuming that we would not be able to do something like we did today, where we adopted a new vaccination game? Just trying to get an impact of what that would mean to all of us until 2023.
So
Is that correct?
if it passed, if it passed with its current language, at least through the effective date of the bill. So as it's currently written, it would take effect January 1 of 2022. So we would be able to do the vaccination incentive today, but we could not do it in 2022.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that we all understand that our one piece of our authority would be prevented for at least a period of time. So I get it. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Okay, and then as Josh mentioned, they do have the numbers for lottery revenue. So there's about 10 bills that appropriate money to our beneficiaries and also authorize lottery bonds for various projects. So I would expect to see some movement on these bills. The Ways and Means Committee did take testimony on some projects that could be funded in part with lottery bonds, and they had several hours of testimony from communities all over Oregon who have many worthy projects. So it'll be interesting to see those getting funded now that they have the revenue forecast. So here's a package of bills I've told you about before that would affect our HR practices here at the lottery. So a new state holiday, some minor changes to hiring and employment, and some changes to Oregon's paid family leave law. Our HR folks are aware of these and prepared to implement those if they pass. Most of these have passed one chamber at least. And then a handful of bills that look likely to pass on the government transparency front. So some public records, public meetings, public rulemaking process. Again, we'll be prepared to implement these if they pass. And then lastly, this screen is just some miscellaneous bills that we're tracking that wouldn't have a huge impact on us at lottery, but they are interesting. So we're tracking those. In terms of next steps for the session, we do have another deadline coming up. So we'll see where bills are at next Friday, and they are hoping to adjourn in June. So the countdown begins for that. So happy to answer any questions about the session. Otherwise, that's all I've got for you.
Questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none. Chris, do you want to move on to your other
Yes.
rulemaking? Yeah.
Yeah, 2 quick rulemaking items for you. So you may have heard our product folks talking about an additional Powerball drawing each week. This was a decision from the Powerball product group last year to add a 3rd weekly drawing every Monday starting August 23rd. The purpose of the drawing is to provide more opportunities for players to win cash prizes and jackpots. The additional drawing does not change the odds of winning or set prize cash amounts, but is intended to increase player interest in ticket sales over time. So it does require a very modest rule change. We're just going to add Monday to the list of weekly Powerball drawings. And so I would go ahead and start the rulemaking process and solicit public comment and report back to you in July. More information in the meeting materials, but pretty simple rule change there. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments from the commission? Chris, on the Powerball one, the way I read your materials, if we want to do Powerball, we have to affect this change. And it doesn't look like it's going to, cause any issues for us. Net, we likely will make more money by doing this. Does Mike understand everything?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Great.
Sometimes they offer some promotions that are sort of optional for member lotteries. This one's not necessarily one of those optional ones, but I think it's one that we think is a good idea as well. So
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
sure.
Anyone else? All right. Thanks, Chris.
I've got one more for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you'd already
Sorry
done your
about
second
that.
one.
Yeah,
Go
okay.
ahead.
So this one's also a simple one. So the commission will recall, it seems like a long time ago, but last year we did change our retailer commission structure. We went from a net sales framework to dollars played. So that change took effect last summer. It's reflected in the current retailer contracts. We've operated under dollars played for almost a year now. We do, however, have a rule that continues to refer to the net sales commission structure. And that rule sets the weekly minimum sales goal for our video retailers. So we would propose to convert the current sales goal into the dollars played commission structure, and we intend for this to be an equivalent across the board change. So we'd go from $200 in average weekly net sales to $2,667 in average weekly dollars played. And the difference there is with net sales, we take out the prizes, where in dollars played, we don't. So that's how we get to the new number. We've done some outreach to the retailers to let them know this is coming and give them a chance to ask any questions. So I would like to start the rulemaking process on this one as well and solicit public comment and report back to you also in July. So in the meantime, there's more information about the change in the meeting materials for those who are interested. Happy to answer questions. Otherwise, that's all I've got on that one.
Questions or comments? Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll move to the next item, Responsible Gaming Code of Practice revision, and Director Pack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you'll recall, Commissioners, Stacy Shaw was before you last month, walking you through proposed revisions to our Responsible Gaming Code of Practice. Part of that practice is that we review it annually and update it. She walked you through all of the changes, most of which were to align with our current practices in the digital sales channel, particularly with Scoreboard, and then just conforming to modern best practices. Last month was the Inform discussion, and I am here today to ask for your adoption of the revised Responsible Gaming Code of Conduct, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the commission? I know we got a really thorough report last time, but if there are additional questions or comments, Barry will answer them. Hearing none, I just want to say again that to the whole team that I continue to be impressed with our responsible gaming program and our work, and including the adoption of this policy. So with that, is there a motion to adopt the revisions that were made to the Responsible Gaming Code of Practice?
I move that the Oregon State Lottery Commission adopt the revised Responsible Gaming code of practice as presented today to be effective today.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Telfer,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilcox,
Aye.
Chair Satthoff.
Aye. For the record, the motion has passed. And we will move to our last agenda item for the day. Is there any other business that anyone on the commission or leadership would like to raise at this time? With that, I want to say there's a lot of really good work put into this meeting. And I really appreciate getting all the materials early so that we can all get ourselves familiar. It helps, I think, in the discussion. And I just want to thank Barry, you and your team and other people who provide this information. With that, I will say that this concludes today's meeting of the Oregon State Lottery Commission. The next meeting is scheduled for June 25th. Thank you for attending today's meeting, and this meeting is adjourned. And very good luck on your session today at 11:30 with the governor.
Thanks. Off to my next. Bye.
Bye-bye.